I'm Christopher Warnock of Renaissance Astrology. Today I'm going to talk about astrology and magic as a crack in the matrix. Now, frankly, the matrix stuff is so banal, it's a cliche. And so what it means is nobody can see it anymore. You've got this cultural concept, it's been so overused that the spark that would have come from it is gone, and people are like, yeah, I know that, blah, 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 and it just washes right over them. So I'm going to use it because I think it's appointing, I think it does accurately kind of point in the direction of what I'm getting at, and it's, again, a shared cultural concept. If I come up with stuff that people have never heard of, that they have no way of grasping, then there's no entry point for them. But like I said, this is so encrusted that it's difficult to to get through what you're saying. But let's start with that. So again, the movie does embody this idea of it's a very Gnostic vision, that you're trapped in this false reality, and that I said the matrix has you, which is correct. Okay, so what you think to be reality is not. Okay, it is an inadequate. No, but rather than saying there's a reality or false reality or whatever, really what I would say is that we're all trapped in this inadequate model. Okay, and so if you penetrate through that, there is this sense of the archons. There is this sense of this powers that are, in a sense malevolent, but at least overarching powers holding you. The real trap, though, is that you're, in a sense, holding yourself. That this false sense of ego, this false sense of I, is creating this illusionary existence, this Maya. So, again, what am I talking about? This all sounds crazy. What I'm going to try to point to in this video is that the idea that there's a real use from the prolonged and aware practice of astrology and magic. Okay, so it's, again, not conceptual and not unaware, but like I said, a deep and penetrating practice that's gone on for a long time, that you're paying attention. Okay, and the first thing that can be done with this, and there's plenty of other things you do with astrology and magic. I mean, there's almost infinite ways to do it, but this is one thing that can be done with astrology and magic, and that's to break the spell of atheistic materialism. And so, I mean, we are really embedded in atheistic materialism, and what do I mean by that? First, like I said, this idea of worldview. Worldview is your conscious philosophy, but also your unconscious views of reality. It is your reality. It's like, how do things work? What's really going on here? Where are you? What is reality? And the worldview thing is a really big step, because what it's acknowledging is the fact that, because the general approach is going to be, there is just reality. It is what it is. It's unchangeable. Everybody sees it my way, and if they don't, they're insane. I mean, if they don't, there's reality, and if you don't accept reality, you're irrational, you're crazy. The idea that there could be different views of reality and that those could be valid as well is just something that, that's a big first step for people. So essentially, atheistic materialism is the view that's been held by the elites and then has percolated into the masses. To this point, it's basically held by everybody, is that nothing exists except matter and energy. So, like, for example, a thought is just, electrochemical impulses in the brain. The brain is this physical organ. The electrochemical impulses are composed of, molecules and then atoms and then subatomic particles, and they're randomly bumping into each other, and that's all there is. So there's nothing more to it than that. And that's all dependent on the physical body. Without the physical body, there's no thoughts. Consciousness, then, awareness or whatever, is dependent on the physical body. It's just emerges, what they say, an epiphenomena emerges from the interaction. You get a being with a complicated enough neural circuitry, and then that's just this consciousness. And they're not even sure if consciousness exists. So this is our reality. And nothing, I said, nothing exists except matter and energy. And what that leads to is to nihilism, so meaninglessness. I mean, ultimately, there is no meaning to anything. Everything's pointless. You didn't exist. You exist for a short time in a painful way, and then you don't exist. I mean, that's reality. That's clear. And your life, for most people, is not under your control. You're stuck in these, you have a job, which is, completely out of your control, and, you're part of this population, like, say, in a huge city, which is not under your control, and it's meaningless, and you're helpless within this. As part of this, though, there's this sort of like, there's sort of openings at points, and that's what I would say about the magic, esotericism in general, is an opening. And so most of the time, I mean, people hear this, like I said, the siren call of magic and astrology or whatever, and then it's, like I said, just a fantasy. I mean, for the most part, it's entertainment, wish fulfillment, books and movies. You go to the movie, you watch the movie, it's fun for a while, and then you get back to reality. As again, got this world of excitement and all this stuff happening and cool stuff, and then you're back to your job or whatever. And really what happens, like I said, with the whole just a fantasy back to reality stuff, the matrix, this consensus reality, it neutralizes as many threats as it can to its conceptual hegemony, right? And it's like you're going to be essentially this is a form of mind control. Not again like the movies with like the brain and they make you do whatever you want, but it's like, if you influence people's reality, if you control people's reality, if that's set, then you basically have them controlled in a generalized way. But you went further. You heard about magic, you heard about astrology, you heard about the esoteric stuff, and you decided, you know what, I'm going to try it. So that marks you out right there. You went ahead and took action. You started practicing astrology and magic. The thing is, though, that then most people, again, get sidetracked. Because what they tend to use astrology and magic for is these various purposes. So, for example, astrology a lot of times gets used for reassurance. And I get a lot of readings where people come to me and say, am I going to get a job in the next, month, or 6 months or whatever? And the expectation is that what they're paying me to do is come back and say, yes, you're going to get a job. Don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. Everything is going to go the way you want it to go. And the problem with that is that because Horary astrology, which is what I would use for that, is predictive, it could say no. And so I'll say that to people, say, was it going to help you if I come back and say, no, you're not going to get the job? And they're like, wait a second, they get kind of freaked out. Some people, that's useful. A lot of people, I'm kind of breaking the spell there, because the purpose was they would pay me, I would tell them everything's okay, and then they wouldn't come back and tell me that I was wrong. If in case I was wrong, they would forget about it. And that's how a lot of astrology is done. Another thing astrology is used for is false sense of control. Mercury retrograde. Oh, things went wrong, Mercury retrograde, blah, blah, blah. Now, they couldn't predict it in advance. Plenty of stuff goes wrong when it's not Mercury retrograde. Plenty of stuff doesn't go wrong with Mercury retrograde, but nevertheless, I can point to it. The same thing with, anytime you're looking at, what I call Hitler's chart. You already know what happened. You look at a chart and of known person or known event, and then you can make anything out of it. So again, that gives you the sense of, I know what's going on. I'm in control. Again, that's really a type of reassurance. Another trap is this super easy mastery stuff. I mean, the New Age style stuff. You read one book and it's got some crystal stuff in it, and blah blah blah. And then you got it. So it's extremely easy stuff. You're not going deeply into it. And again, a lot of times, ultimately, the biggest trap, probably for astrology and magic, is that it's just a way to get what I want. It's just a way to get stuff. It's a way to bend the world to my will, to get what I want. And I do that in a compartmentalized way. I guess that's probably also another very broad use of it, is that, there's plenty of people that the one weird thing they do is they do astrology, right? And it's very carefully kept in this box, and it doesn't affect anything else in their life, particularly, like I said, worldview. So ultimately, these are ways of channeling it, of the esoteric stuff, and getting it under control, and housebreaking, and making sure it doesn't cause any trouble for you, and doesn't upset the rest of your life, doesn't upset the way you think about things, and biggest thing is not to challenge the worldview. And I mean, this is what I find, it's kind of inexplicable to me in a way. I mean, I start off all my full courses talking about worldview and talking about the traditional worldview. And again, I don't want to come in and say atheistic materialism is wrong or it's bad or anything like that, because that just gets into a whole ego complex of like, I'm not bad, therefore I'm not X. It's like, whatever, it's that just ends up being this whole, mental games that you play with yourself. There's nothing wrong with being atheistic materialist. In fact, there's nothing wrong with waking up. I'm only putting this stuff out there because there's a few people that this is going to punch a button with. Okay, a few people this is going to plant a seed, and that's for them, right? But it's just not necessary for everybody to do this stuff. But if you're hearing this and you're going, it's sort of causing a little bit of an itch there. It's sort of causing a little bit of a, hey, maybe this is something that, it's sort of intriguing, actually, what I would say, wow, this is some interesting stuff. Then let's keep going with it. Because like I said, the ultimate use for me, astrology and magic is very useful in a practical way. These are practical applications of spirituality. And it's cool to predict. It's cool to, do magical stuff and have results and everything. But for me, the most key use of them was that it exploded my atheistic materialism. Now, it took a while, and it was a real struggle for me. But what I realized was that the atheistic materialism is not an accurate view of reality. So if the astrology and magic works, then atheistic materialism has got a huge amount of holes in it. So I would put to you, I say, see if you can identify yourself and see if you can do this courageously, okay? Because if you come back and say, oh, I'm not atheistic materialistic, then you really need to think about that, because it's been put forth, I'm putting this forth as a positive thing. And like I said, you're going to want to say a positive thing. So what I would say to you is a couple things. Do you find the sidereal zodiac instinctively, that's the right one? That makes a lot of sense to you, though. It's closer to the actual stars, the material stars, therefore that really makes sense to you. That's the one you should use, okay, atheistic materialist. Is astrology symbolic? Okay, yes, it works through symbolic. It's symbolic, atheistic materialism. Energy. Is it the causality of magic and astrology? Energy. It's like whether it's spiritual energy or not. Again, atheistic materialism. You're still stuck. Okay, so these are all little tests, and it's not a test of how good you or bad you are. It's just this is where you're at, and can you bravely face the actuality of it? That's the first step, is being willing to acknowledge the fact that yes, I'm stuck in the trap. I'm in the matrix. You're not going to wake up. If you insist that you're already awake when you're asleep, you're never going to be able to wake up from it. So that's what I said, is really that the astrology and magic are an incredibly useful way of seeing that atheistic materialism is not an accurate view of reality. Like I said, if astrology works, it's because of the spiritual sympathy and interconnection of all things, not through any physical force, not through any energetic force of any kind. And even energy, spiritual energy, does not make sense with horary. Okay? So the time of the asking of a question and the astrologer's location gives me the answer. What possible energetic, even spiritual energy is going to explain that, okay? It can only be that everything's incredibly patterned, right? Except everything's come together at that moment, and if I read the patterning of that moment, then everything in that moment is connected. I can see the answer to the question, okay? And how does energy work with that in any way, shape, or form, okay? And then in terms of the work, when you're working with this is not like doing a spell. It's not like making one talisman. It's not like, oh yeah, I have 15 minutes of work. I looked at my chart. This is some prolonged, real deep immersion. And it doesn't matter which type necessarily. You can do all sorts of different things with it. But if you're really paying attention and you're doing this over and over again, then it has a potential to actually break through. And so in terms of, say, magic working, it's like if you're expecting lightning bolts, Harry Potter, some extravagant instant results, again, you're not getting it, okay? And that's, this is a fictional thing, and that's going to get you up, oh, it doesn't work, and you're going to go back, you're going to give up. Pay attention, pay really close attention. Synchronicities, for example. And again, this is going to have to give up willingness to what does it mean? It's like, I see when my wife and I call it looping, I'll see these connections coming up all the time. I do not know what they mean. Okay, it's the tip of the iceberg. I can see there's a pattern, but I'm not sure what the pattern is. Okay, horary, like I said, this is a really great thing to see it. I've done like 5,000 readings for clients, and I've had an insane number of accurate predictions. At some point the coincidence runs out. And there's a recognition that there is And with Horary in particular, there's a participatory thing. The technique doesn't work by itself. Okay, this is not separate from me. There has to be this melding of the querent, person asking the question, right? This important question for them that's significant enough, that has emotional juice for them, that they're willing to be impelled to ask the question, and then they ask the question of the astrologer. And it completes the circuit with the celestial cycles that also indicate the underlying spiritual cycles. So it's incredible complex coming together, and and then the reading of that patterning. And so that, again, can only happen through the spiritual connection or spiritual unity of all things. And so can you see that? Can you see it as a lived reality as opposed to a concept, right? It's like, yeah, then I'm back to atheistic materialism. So ultimately what it pulls you towards is this reality that's intricately patterned in every possible infinite aspect and deeply imbued with meaning, okay? This is a lived reality of a world that's full of, that contains nothing but living spiritual beings, bodied and disembodied. Not just animals and plants, but rocks, trees, like I said, rivers, summer, angels, stars, an infinite number of these disembodied realities and persons. And then if we see that, then we start to penetrate deeper into it. And like I said, we can see the reality of the archons, for example. The reality of these spiritual beings that are, in a sense, controlling this and creating this reality. That they use, as I said, the greatest, trick of Satan was to convince people he didn't exist, And so we are so controlled and so influenced by magic, that the internet has opened us up. We've got this, just like the Matrix, plugged right into the back of our head, into our consciousness, an insane amount of stuff. I mean, it's amazing to me. I take a walk every day in this beautiful cemetery, incredible grounds, woods and everything, and these people walking around in the cemetery looking at their phones. I mean, it just blows my mind. Those are people, they're addicted, okay? And they can't, again, the Matrix has them, the archons have them, and they can't even pull their consciousness away from that for even 5 minutes to see the reality that they're in, to see the beautiful trees, the flowers and everything like that. They're oblivious to it. So, and there's this clash of good and evil. Like I said, this is not the ultimate reality, but see that duality, and that's going on as well. And not just as the projection interferes, not the conspiracy theory stuff that tends to be, but as a lived reality. So what's possible then is, and this is the thing about the Matrix, is that the Matrix movie depicts this reality of waking up from this false reality, right? But what's shown in the movie is a false awakening. Okay, it's like a dream where you think you wake up, but you're still in the dream. Okay, and all the first Matrix movie and all the rest of those Matrix movies, that was incredibly intriguing, the idea of this whole Gnostic thing and waking up, but the creators had no idea what to do. I mean, all they could think of was like you woke up and you're in this other real reality. Well, that wasn't real either. So it's this false awakening, and that's a key problem as well. The true awakening, and this is the next step, and there's going to be infinite steps after that, in my view. But the true awakening that was never shown in the Matrix, and that's from people that wake up to the disreality or the falsity of the consensus reality, they still replicate the self. And this is what's incredible about Buddhism, is this whole view of and teaching and pointing and striving and then non-striving towards the recognition and awareness and reality of no self. Because, and it's interesting because a lot of left-hand stuff, the ultimate stuff, like, for example, Luciferian anti-cosmic thinking, is that the self becomes a god, and it becomes like a god. And that truly is the religion of the modern, the unreligion of the modern view, which is that the ego self is God. What I desire, what I want to remake reality to fit that. And this is the cause of suffering, and pain is this desire for self. I mean, I want stuff for myself, so it makes me mess over other people, hurt other people, blah, blah, blah. And why are people always hurting me? Because they're concerned with the self. So again, it goes around until, again, there's that waking. So that's what I would say that astrology and magic have the potential as well too. is that this is that second awakening. And again, I don't think it's the end of it all, but that's what's possible with it. So if this all just seems like a bunch of gobbledygook, it's okay. I mean, it's not a problem. You know, if a seed is planted, though, this is what I would say about it, is that, and that's what my Celestial Way book to a great extent was like, that's for a certain number of people, the devotional practice with the celestial spirits it's an opening for them. It resonates for them. And, if it's just a way to get stuff, if it's just a way to make your own life, better, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But then there are potentials beyond that. And like I said, that initial awakening to the reality that the atheistic materialism, that the consensus reality is not a good model. And in fact, has some really horrible, side effects. Nihilism, this loss of meaning, what's the point of being alive? I mean, you can suffer and go through a lot as long as it's meaningful. But if it's meaningless, then that's probably the worst possible, reality you could be in. And that's not true. This is like that a reality has to be meaningless is just absolutely not, that's not true. I mean, if that's your lived reality, that's what it is. But it's certainly possible to have a reality where life is full of meaning and full of purpose. And so that's what I would say is that, if you can get beyond this encrusted matrix thing and sort of penetrate to that, and maybe the first time you saw that, or first time it's, get back to that kind of a wow, recognition of the truth that was pointing to, within all the other stuff that's thrown in with that. And then to say, we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop with this initial awakening. We're going to go on to the next step. Now, like I said, my view is there's infinite steps beyond that. But that's start with trying to live in a spiritual reality, right? And ultimately what that is there is no interconnection of things. There is no causality because everything is one, right? Everything is connected, but if you say connected, that means there's separate things. Everything is, and so that's really the next step beyond, is to then penetrate and live that reality of the one. So, like I said, I'm going to throw this out there. A lot of it is not going to make a whole lot of sense to a lot of people. That's okay, but I think it's definitely something that's the recognition that I've had. And I wanted to share that. If it's helpful for you, great. If it doesn't make any sense, that's fine too. I mean, it's all good.